How many of us get to live out our dream as a professional athlete? I'll say not too many. Even fewer get the opportunity to win a championship, let alone two in a career. And yet, as great as that is, a professional athlete's career is short lived, and with the average player lasting less than 5 years. It's a young man's game for sure. So, what do you do for an encore? Well, how about becoming a surgeon? Wait, what? Yep, that's right. And in today's episode, I speak with a two-time Super Bowl champion and surgeon and talk about success, how he became a surgeon, and so much more. But before we get into all that, I just want to remind you, if you're interested in raising your standards as a father, a husband, and an entrepreneur, then I encourage you to start your hero's quest. In this program, you're going to accomplish more, develop more, and become more in the next 90 days than you have ever in your life. Now, you can get more information about this at the Awakened Man Training Academy at members.theawakenedman.net. Now, with that, let's get on with today's episode.
The average man today is sleepwalking through life, many never reaching their true potential, let alone ever crossing the finish line to living a purposeful life. Yet, the hunger still exists, albeit buried amidst his cluttered mind, misguided beliefs, and values that no longer serve him. It's time to align yourself for greatness. It's time to become a revolutionary man. Stay strong, my brother.
Welcome, everyone, to the Revolutionary Man podcast. I'm the founder of the Awakened Man movement and your host, Alan DeMonso. Before we get started, let me ask you a question. When you think about your dreams, how close are you to living them? For me, I can say I'm living my second dream. The first was to be a chef, and for 15 years, I had the ability to do that. Then, as life changed, so did my dreams. And today, my dream is to serve the communities of the world by mentoring men to live the highest vision of themselves. And for that, I can say I am truly grateful. And today's guest is doing the same thing just in front of millions of people while helping thousands of others reclaim their confidence and their self-esteem. So allow me this opportunity to introduce my guest. Dr. John Frank attended and played football in Ohio State University. And in 1984, he was picked in the second round of the NFL draft by the San Francisco 49ers, where he became a two-time Super Bowl champion as a tight end, and where he played with the NFL legends like Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, and Steve Young. Yet during his career and his time in the NFL, John also earned victories in Super Bowls 19 and 23. And at the height of the sports career, where he was most jubilant, he retired to pursue his dream of being a surgeon. During the past 25 years, Dr. Frank has perfected the art, science, and skill of hair restoration for both men and women. And so often, as a maverick comes along who shakes up common beliefs or releases otherwise untold information, Dr. Frank shares his wisdom, beliefs, and tips in his new book, 2-Minute Warning. And I just can't wait to get into this conversation. So welcome to the show, John. How are things today, my friend?
Great, Alan. Thank you so much. I've had over the years the chance to be introduced and speak and chat with folks, but I got to say that was a really great introduction, and so I appreciate it. So it's nice to be here.
Right on. Really, like I said, I was really looking forward to this conversation. And, John, in our work, I spend a lot of time talking about all of us being on a hero's quest. And so tell us a little bit more about a time in your life when you knew things had to change. And how did you go about doing that? How did that experience shape you into the man you are today and the work that you're doing?
Wow, that's well, you're starting off with a bang, Alan. That's that's a big question. I think I'm trying to always change. Yeah. That's not really a destination, but a journey. Mm-hmm. And when you're young, or at least when I was young, it was all about conquering things and achieving and success and slaying windmills. And so I went from whatever sport it was when I was very young, number of sports, and I found that I was good enough to play competitive football at the highest levels, and then medicine and business and other things. But it's only really been, I think, the second half of my life where some of the things which I'm learning, that I see that you're stressing, and some of your basis for what you're doing is the most important things to me. And I don't want to cast too big of a shadow this early in your podcast, but these things really I'm sure we'll get into it. They resonate with me very strongly, very strongly.
Absolutely. Yeah. And no concern with that. Like I'm so honored to have such privilege to be in this same company as you, because let's face it, a lot of us have icons who are professional sports athletes, yet we fail to recognize the what it costs you as an athlete to be able to be at that level, and yet still have such a short career and having to move on into something else. And there's lots of stories where that doesn't always happen for everybody. And so tell me a little bit about what the biggest challenge you had to overcome transitioning from pro football to then becoming a surgeon.
That was hard. It was very difficult. I had my mindset that on being a surgeon no matter what, and football was, I don't know, maybe a stepping stone or a side journey, which is a little bit unusual because it takes so much focus and dedication. So I knew I was always going to be a doctor come hell or high water. And so when I left, I played 5 years in the NFL. My first season, I was drafted in the second round by the 49ers. And I knew it was a good team. They were an up and coming team. But it was so far from where I lived in Ohio in college at the time, and my family in Pennsylvania. So Midwest towards the East Coast of the U.S. and then San Francisco drafted me. I'm like, okay, well that's kind of far. I hadn't really been paying much attention to the NFL at the time. I was a college athlete, and in my first year we won the Super Bowl. So I got there and I thought they were a pretty good team, but everything turned out. Win the darn Super Bowl my very first year. And I played a total of 5 years, and it was hard getting back. And, but once you do it your first year, maybe you don't appreciate it for some of the guys that may have been in it for 10, 20 years. I got it my first year, and then my fifth season, we won it again. And by then I had risen up the ranks from being a backup supporting cat. I played a lot early, but I still wasn't the starting tight end, which was a big goal. And I finally made the starting team in my fourth year, and then we won the Super Bowl in my fifth year, and I was the starting tight end in Super Bowl 23 and caught a couple passes and was really in there. And so I retired after that because to me that was the pinnacle. I felt like I had reached the top of the mountain for me, and I was going to medical school, but I'm in earnest trying to answer your question about what was difficult about that. And even though it seemed like I had a laser focus on what I was going to do next, man, it was tough. I was in medical school with students which were much more advanced and brighter and than me. And then, the football games were on in the background, and they were all everybody I tried to fit in socially with a study group and get along with everybody. I was sort of the odd person out because I hadn't been there. Took the time off to play football, but they all, they were great. They met lifelong friends, and they were interested in football, and they were interested in me. And I was struggling. I mean, I saw the 49ers were in the Super Bowl again the next year after I retired, and I was just trying to figure out how to pass and get through medical school. And I thought, my God, what happened? What did I do? And there was really no going back. I stayed in good condition for a couple of years. I probably still could have played. I don't know to what level, but I think I could have made a roster somewhere. But there really was no turning back. And, that goes back a long time for me. And I'm glad I made that transition myself, because most players, I think the overwhelming majority of players, they take it to the bitter end, like Tom Brady or almost everybody. And being forced out because you're either you don't have the skills that you did, and the younger players coming in to take your place. It can be hard. I've seen it many, many, many times, and it's heart-wrenching. And so I'm really lucky I kind of did it at my own accord. And so that was, even though it was very difficult, I think it's even harder for some of the guys that can't do it anymore. So I was very lucky. I was very, very blessed and lucky.
And what I really appreciate what you're saying there, John, about that challenge going through is that, really you're an adult learner. And what would you say? You're probably mid-20s going going to medical school,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
maybe you were 4 or 5 years older than your classmates. And I can
Right.
just think about in my late mid 40s, going after my MBA and sitting
Yeah.
there thinking, geez, how challenging that is. And I think, and then the other thing you talked about is just, having that doubt, and how often in our lives as men that we make decisions, and do we have the fortitude that when doubt does come in to stay with it? Because it could have been pretty easy for you to pick up the phone, I would imagine, get an agent, and and then go back. And that was the other takeaway. And the third one is that I had that I was getting from you is you really had a solid sense of who you are as a man, like your identity, right? You didn't necessarily identify yourself, that I'm a pro football player, but so much more than that. And so let's talk a little bit about how all of those three pieces really shaped the man that you are today.
Well, I mean, despite all the success that I was having on the surface as an athlete and academically, I was observing. I was looking at people around me, and I was looking for. I was studying the great players, the great coaches, the great doctors, and I was always comparing myself, and I knew that there was something missing. Not a giant gaping hole in who I was or what I knew about myself, but I always felt like I wanted to improve. And after a couple careers and sticking with things, I realized that the real battle, the real success comes from within. And wanted to. I was single, and I finally got married. I met my wife Edith. Gosh, we're married 16 years. So, that was like the next step for me, and doing that well. That was, I mean, it's kind of ironic to try and think of that as a career, but I'm dedicated and devoted to my wife and my kids but now I'm bringing, a lot more wisdom I'm older. So, when you're in your 40s trying to get your MBA, you don't have the recall like when you're 5. You can learn languages and things that it's so easy. But so we don't have that when we're older. But I do have the experience, and I'm dedicated to to be an overall model. That's why we started to talk about that at the beginning of the podcast, and that's legit. That's what it's all about. And I tell my kids, this I waited to get married. And I kind of regret not having. I don't regret the experiences I had, but it would have been nice to have done that sooner. And it's like, okay, let's go. Let's get on with life, the real part of life. So I feel like I'm in life's not easy. It has its struggles and its challenges almost every day, if not every week. But this is where I want to be, and so I'm happy to talk about it.
Right on. Well, let's move over into your work you're doing today. Now, you wrote the book 2 Minute Morning. Tell us a little bit about how you came about the idea of writing this book, and what can men expect when they go to pick it up and read it.
2 minute warning: winning the game of hair loss. A 2 minute warning in football is it sounds like it's a critical time. It is a critical time. There's only 2 minutes left on the clock, but what it actually is a timeout. You get a free timeout. You don't have to waste one of your hard-earned 3 timeouts per half. I think that's what it is. And but when the 2 minute warning comes, the clock stops, and you get to sort of slow down and realign where you are. And that's how it is with hair loss. The book is really written and designed for men like us that are, not 18, not 25, but really 35 and older. Kind of know who you are, set in your career. You've got it pretty much figured out. And one thing that's bothering you is the hair. And I'm not going to take too much time to get into how I made the decision to be a hair surgeon, a plastic surgeon. But talking about the book, it's the 2 minute warning. It's like, here's a little break, take a breather, take an hour and a half, read the book. It was published by Bite Sized Books, and my great friend Mike Capuzzi was just a wonderful mentor in writing and publishing, and I wrote the book with his help, but I'm really the author, and it's a break. It's a time to, if you're in that demographic and you want real. Now there's some things in there. I took some risks, and I'm sure my colleagues, if they get their hands on this book, it's a little, we're shaking it up a little bit, because much of, just like I think in anything, much of the world goes along with just the tide and the main, the flow of things, and don't really are kind of afraid to speak up. But there's some things which are some myths in the hair loss industry, and some things which aren't really emphasized. And so I'm trying to just sort of cherry pick some of the really most important things, and maybe some misunderstandings that people might have about hair. Some very common things that everybody thinks is great is not great.
Yeah, absolutely. And
that's
I was
a
really
warning. It's
yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was saying the foreword is by the great Hall of Fame quarterback Joe Montana. He took the time to write the foreword, and I try and share something at least every chapter. There are like, I don't know how many, I can't remember now, 7 or 8 chapters, but every couple chapters I want to put in a little football metaphor, something about myself, just to, because it's not all about hair, but it ties into every life experiences and what I did as a professional.
Cool. Right. Love that. And hair loss really is for guys. It's one of those pieces that really can affect us, right? We have this, and then I talked a little bit about identity, and I think it's in, I recognize that in my men's work. Some of us really get caught that, our profession or our career is who we are. That's how we see ourselves. And others have, we're just blessed. Some of us, not me in this one, but with good looks and great hair. And so when that starts to happen, we can struggle through life. And so in getting prepared for this, I was doing some other research, and I do want to dive a little bit into some of your work around the hair loss and that. And so tell me a little bit about that. I had heard that testosterone, or an excess of testosterone, can cause male pattern baldness. And I just wanted to get your take on that, because I think as guys, we get older and we start thinking about taking testosterone therapy. What are some of the things we may need to pay attention to as we get into this, as some of the side effects or other challenges that we may not be considering?
Yeah, testosterone can be a major culprit. And so if you see hair loss in a young guy, it's very rare to see it in a young teenager, but plenty of young men in their late teens and early 20s start to lose their hair. And that's probably hormonal related, testosterone, when they go through puberty. But the hair doesn't fall out right away. It takes 5, dozen years before they start to really notice it. So maybe somebody at the age of 25 or 30, and they're starting to have some hair loss. It's only because their hair follicles, the roots of their hairs, have been laden with a type of testosterone which their body makes, and it causes hair loss. So when I see guys older that are taking supplements, vitamin T, testosterone replacement, I'm not an endocrinologist. I've had my fair share of in taking things and performance enhancement, and push the envelope on a lot of stuff, Alan. And so I'm not one to criticize anybody for what they're doing. So, but I do see with testosterone supplements some hair loss with that, and there's some other things which are in that same mix, in the same bag of hair loss. And I've seen it with statins. Guys that have high cholesterol, and I mean, again, I'm not here to criticize anybody or any industry, but gosh, some of the medicines that people take are unfortunately they're contributing to hair loss, and the testosterone can be one of them. Not for everybody. You also have to be sort of genetically predisposed to have that hair loss. There's some other enzymes in our body, which there's guys that are full of testosterone, and they have a great head of hair. So like Ronald Reagan, so there's a couple things. There's the genetics, then there's the testosterone, and there's a bunch of other things, and everything from the shampoos we use to the environment to the filtered water, and things like this. So there's a lot that goes into it.
Right on. Absolutely. And yeah, and for sure our conversation today isn't necessarily about bashing anything, but I think we want to provide awareness to as men are
Yeah.
just more conscious today of what we do with our bodies, and how we take care of ourselves. And sometimes we may not consider things. And so that's why I think it's so unique in the field that you've decided to apply yourself in, that it's a great opportunity for guys to understand. And thank you so much for stating that it's not, hair loss isn't I'll say an old man's game. This can happen for any man, and so it could be even more traumatic for younger gentlemen than it is for us that are a little more seasoned, I'll say. So I think it's important we have that they understand. There's lots of
Yeah, it
factors that
doesn't.
play into it.
There are a lot of factors. It's quite complicated, and it doesn't feel good. When I was like 20, I started to have some hair loss, and it's like, what's going on here? Every barber I'd go to, I'd say, can you validate I'm losing hair? And nobody wanted to agree with me. And then over the years, you start to lose it, and sometimes you just put it to the back of your mind, you forget about it, or you try some things. Yeah, it's really important to get professional advice. And I'm not just saying that, because many people, the hair loss industry has become so commercialized that it's a lot of sales going on, and over sales. And so and if I could beat my own chest and apologize, I used to do it myself and try and get everybody in the door. But nowadays, just to keep it honest, we charge a little money for the consultation, and that way it makes it beholden to really just try and give people the right advice. And that's what, like I tell people, I mean, if I had the discipline to leave the NFL to go to medical school, I certainly can have the discipline to give you the right advice. And so that's why the complimentary book is so valuable. There's so much information in there. Otherwise, we charge for it in a brief consultation. Not a lot of money for the consultation. And so it's really, really helpful. If you have hair loss, it's very, very helpful to get the book. And if you want to have a Zoom consult with me, then you should do it. It'll save people a lot of money and heartache in the long term.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And just another question I wanted to get into. I was looking at doing a little bit of Ray Peat's work. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the late Dr. Ray Peat, and he talked a bit about hair loss as well. But he really focused on how the thyroid could really affect that. Tell me any of your thoughts on that. It's another aspect of our lives that is getting a little bit more headline today about our bodies.
It's interesting. The thyroid is, I used to be a thyroid surgeon, and before I was a hair surgeon, and so I know it quite well. It's a small little gland in your neck. It has a very, very important metabolic functions in your body. The parathyroid gland is a small one right next to the thyroid, and then it regulates the calcium in your body, which is essential and for living. And if you do have a thyroid problem, all the textbooks say that it can cause some hair loss, and everybody the medical establishment knows that, and hair doctors should know that. But it's a little bit counterintuitive, Alan. I've probably treated, I don't know how many thousands of people for hair loss, and it's actually one of the rarer causes for hair loss. And so I don't get too excited about it.
Right on.
And the thyroid gland is nice. I mean, and I used to be, like I said, a thyroid surgeon, and people would have thyroid tumors and things. Most of the time, those are really treatable and curable problems. And same thing with just low thyroid. It's treated. It can be treatable medically, and it's.
You're on mute. Yeah, you're on mute again there, bud.
That must be an auto mute. I'm so sorry. I hope it's not my Wi-Fi. I'm just inching closer and closer to my modem there. So anyway, I don't see that much hair loss with thyroid problems, and I know you're going to maybe have a heck of a time editing this, splicing this together. I'm really sorry for that.
It's all good, brother. It's all good, man. Listen, one of the things I understood is that that you have one of our favorite comedians is John Candy, and I understand you have a pretty interesting story about him. I wouldn't mind if you'd share it with us and talk about the late great John Candy.
Yeah, that's sort of a famous story in NFL history that John Candy was on the sidelines of the Super Bowl 23 in Miami. And you know, in the NFL, there's celebrities everywhere, and I think Billy Joel sang the national anthem, and at the time he was married to Christy Brinkley, was a famous fashion model, well known, and I think they were in there. And over the years, you'd see tons of people, but during that game, John Candy was on the sidelines, and this was an iconic football game because it came down to the last 2 minutes actually. And we had a come from behind win, and Joe Montana, the quarterback, who was amazing, just during one of the timeouts when everybody was really nervous, he tried to calm everybody in the huddle by just saying, "Hey, listen, man, look down there. There's John Candy," and it took our mind, it distracted us, and these little things which happen, and so. I don't recall exactly what happened, but that's basically the story of what happened there. So people know about that in the sports annals.
Yeah. Well, John ended up with a few folks owning a Canadian Football League franchise up here in Toronto. So for a little while, so that experience at the Super Bowl probably really ignited his love for football, and so they owned the Argonauts for a little while, and it was pretty cool.
I was not aware of that. I just knew he was so hilarious, and his gigs on Saturday Night Live and everything, and good to know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Listen, so what would you recommend as your top 3 suggestions for anyone looking to identify their true calling? And because I think it probably took an opportunity. It took you a little while. Football led to one of it. I don't know if it necessarily was your true calling, but for sure, this second half of your life, the second phase, is probably doing it. So tell me a little bit about what would you suggest folks do to look to find that?
Number one would be meditation. And I was fortunate enough to just happen to walk into a meditation class in my 20s. Had no idea what this was. I was trying to kill time. I was in between a few things, and someone said, "Hey, you want to come into this meditation class?" So I didn't, and it didn't really sink in at the time. But over the course of my lifetime, that's something I try and do every day, multiple times, and it gets it's an interesting thing. People, if you have meditated, then you kind of know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, it maybe is something that seems a little bit out there. But I don't think there's anything that can replace that. And exercise, I put meditation at the top. I put exercise is probably, people want to invest their time and their money and their energy and their efforts and things, but I think the best pound for pound investment in anything is exercise. And I'm not a fanatic. I played professional sports, but I know people my age that are far more into athletics now and exercise than I am. But I'm just saying that for a time investment, for an hour or 2 hours or whatever, a commitment to an exercise, to get into that zone, whatever your choice of exercise is, then there's really there's no better investment for a time. So meditation. But the thing about exercise is, people don't realize it, but the things we do all day, whether it's just washing the dishes or exercising or reading a book, or there are times when we're always meditating. But I like to put that at the top, and then exercise, and I think nutrition is really, you can't go through life without some self-restraint on nutrition. And so those are things that I really I find very, very, very important. Now, I've made my mistakes in all these things, you think that you can get to a place, you can get to nirvana through other things, but I've learned the hard way that meditation is really the best and the most wholesome way to do it. And exercise, either overtrain or you get too lazy. And I've made my mistakes with nutrition too. It's like I got into this phase of I had early success with intermittent fasting for a couple months, and I leaned out, and then I got to the point where I'm like, well, gosh, I guess I can eat anything. So just because you do it, you fast intermittently doesn't mean you can not still have to restrain yourself at other times. Yeah. So those are you asked me what are the things those are my top 3 things. Of course, family and spending time with my wife and kids is surpasses everything.
Absolutely.
And you mix in a little spirituality, and I think you got a pretty good, you got me in a nutshell. And
Right on.
I think it's a pretty decent little package.
Love that. Just love that. That's great. Through the course of your life, if you were to think back, what would be the best piece of advice you've ever received?
I keep inching closer and closer to my Wi-Fi here, Alan.
Oh,
I'm
good,
getting
buddy.
like, before too long, I'm going to be pressed against the glass of the back porch.
It won't be much longer, my friend. I don't know if you caught that last question. I was asking what was the best piece of advice that you've received in your life.
The best piece of advice what comes to mind is somebody in medical school said, because I was struggling in that first year, as I was telling you, I was stepping off the gridiron into the classroom in the anatomy lab, and they were ready to kick me out because I was struggling so much. But I had a professor. It was one of the professors. He said, and I said, God, you got to help me with this biochemistry, and I need help with this grade and that thing. And he said, listen, John, the most important thing is for you to know yourself. And I never really, I was younger at the time, at this point in my life, it's like, well, obviously, but when you're young and somebody know yourself, wait, what about geometry? And what about astronomy? And what about art? What about girls? And what about sports? So I think it's probably one of the darkest times of my life. I was down. I quit football. I wasn't going to make it through med school. And, sometimes you have to be in like those darkest spots to get rewired. And unfortunately, that stuck with me. And that's not something you wake up the next day and say, okay, now I know myself. That's like a lifelong journey. So I'm grateful that I had that type of, that advice. So
yeah.
Thanks for that question. I don't, once in a while I think about that.
Nice. I really like that answer too. Of everything that we spoke about today, and maybe there's something we didn't get a chance to touch on, what would be the one takeaway you'd like our listeners to have?
One takeaway for your listeners, my God, I mean, I think there's so much that, I think everybody sort of needs to have a, sort of a fallback principle that they live on. And, like we talked about these things you asked me with, what are the principles to live by? Like, for me, meditation and exercise and the right nutrition and family and a dose of spirituality. But at the end of the day, we all really need to have I get my basics from that circle, and really the center of everything is just really going through life treating, the golden rule, treating people the way that you would want to be treated. I think if you have that as your brand, then you're going to have your ups and downs. But if you come back to that as your default way to be, and it's not easy, and that's not easy, but something to strive for. It's a good place to set the bar.
Love that. Absolutely. I just want to say once again, thank you so much, John, for spending time with us today. And you've been able to help us as men understand a little bit why we need to step up and really take a leadership of our bodies and understand the things that affect us and how we can be, the true leaders in our homes. If men were interested in getting a hold of you, what would be the best way they can do that, and how can they reach you?
I think just do a Google search for me, and they can get a hold of my office number there. You should get a copy of the free book. It's well worth your 1 hour, and that's at www.johnfrankmd.net. And there's a QR code there. You can scan that and get a hold of me in my office. And I'm happy to meet anyone that I'm in the hair loss world. So if you got that problem, then reach out to me. I'll talk to you. I'll set you straight. You'll get some good, honest, helpful advice from me.
Love that. I'm going to make sure all that information's in the show notes so folks can get out and reach out to you. So thank you so much for spending time with me today. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Likewise. I really appreciate it. You're a good man. Appreciate the time together. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Revolutionary Man podcast. Are you ready to own your destiny? To become more the man you are destined to be? Join the brotherhood that is The Awakened Man at theawakenedman.net and start forging a new destiny today.